Law Roberts. Jamie Davidson is joining us today. Jamie is an original Amazon seller. I like to call you that because you've been selling for over a decade. And I know Amazon's been around longer than that. But Jamie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joa, it's awesome to be here.
Let's talk about how advertising has changed from when you were first running ads. I guess I should ask, like, hey, when you launched your first products, did you even run ads?
Not at the very beginning, no. Just eventually moved into it first years, but yeah, at the very, very beginning, like 2012, etc. Uh, no, but then it evolved that pretty quickly that we started to, but it was completely different than now. But everything was, PPC only was really the only option back then. So there was no like brand advertising or things like DSP or some of the latest things, but yeah, it was definitely very different in the early days.
And what were you selling? Was it competitive?
Yeah, super competitive. The big product we sold got to like basically a few thousand different variations in the category, which is cell phone accessories. But in particular, we're selling really iPad cases was the first thing that we were selling. iPad cases, and then cell phone cases became the big thing that we're known for in the space, and we're like one of the top three brands, worldwide on Amazon in the space. But yeah, super super competitive. Like really, cell phone accessories and supplements are like the two most competitive categories on Amazon. So yeah, it was hyper competitive.
So it was more like the race to be first, right? Like first with the new iPad design, first with the new iPhone.
Yeah, when you're dealing with those type of products, again, depending on what product you're selling, everything has a little bit of a different angle and a different approach. If you're selling, for example, seasonal products, then of course you have to have this inventory dynamic. If you're selling things that only sell in the summer, or let's say it's specific to a holiday like Halloween items, you have to have this huge ramp up, or something that's kind of evergreen that goes on. The cell phone accessories are a little bit in between because we're really tied to the launch of new models of phones in terms of a spike in sales. So every year Amazon comes out, or excuse me, Apple comes out with their new iPhone. Samsung comes out with their new phones as well too, and those, as soon as those launch or announce those launch, uh, you want to be ready to have the exact fit design for that new model, which is a little bit tricky because you don't know. Apple doesn't announce ahead of time what the specs are of their new phone. But just to your point, absolutely, it's a race to like who can rank uh, organically, first. And just like when you're launching a new product, because it is a new product, every time a new model comes out, how do you get reviews? How do you organically rank for like, when iPhone 16, how do you rank for iPhone 16 when it comes out right away, and iPhone 17, etc.
So for Amazon PPC, before it's even released, are you already trying to rank for those keywords, like to tell the algorithm, even though nobody's searching for it? That's kind of tricky.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. We didn't do that as much. It was more the strategy is because when it first launches, in this case, like when the phone is first announced, people don't necessarily don't get the phone right away, right? They start ordering the phone, and so it's not like they physically have the phone for day one. But when they order the phone, they want a case with it, right? So they'll start doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's just as soon as it was launched, and we have to make sure like our design is proper, we have all the right information, that our phone fits perfectly. So there is like we're doing that ahead of the time. There's kind of like a black market in China to get a hold of what the phone designs are, and just with that, we get the case ready. And then as soon as it's announced, typically we are kind of inefficiently, it looks like basically we're spending a lot of money with a, an inefficient ACOS or a lower ROAS. So return on our advertising spend that we would typically want. But that early period, we're just fighting for that. And again, this is very similar to anyone, no matter what product you're launching. But in that case, yeah, it's a little bit of a shorter window. It's a little bit of a quicker race to get there for that model, and then we then we try to level back out the advertising spending as the further we get into it.
Really cool. And I do have to tell you, I have looked back at all the iPhone cases I bought on Amazon, and they're pretty much all from your brand. And I bought one I realized it because I was looking this weekend. I knew we were going to be doing this podcast. And I was looking this weekend for a iPhone case for my phone. And I was like, hey, wait, these are Jamie's iPhone cases and your brand. So it's been around a long time now.
Yeah, it's done well. It's definitely done well. It's definitely multi-channel these days too. It's Amazon and then, certainly on other platforms. But, it goes into, you and I talk about this a lot too, is, the power of building a brand led by Amazon, and certainly advertising and PPC, all those things tie into it. But, when you first start off selling your products on Amazon, you don't have to have any brand recognition, et cetera. But over time, if in the one of the long-term benefits of doing this is that your brand does become known beyond just keyword researchers or just PPC stuff, but people do get to know it. And of course, you get repeat customers, just like you do with anything that, any household item that you like and you use, you're going to go back to that again, typically. Right. And so it's the same thing with any brand. But yeah, that's certainly the case, the situation with our brands.
Yeah. So for Amazon advertising, it has come a long way. Even for me, I mean, the first time I ever advertised a product was 2017, really learned advertising in like 2021. And now brands cannot just put up a product and let it hang out. It's like you have to do PPC, but also Amazon has created so many different ways that brands can now advertise. And that must be amazing for you to see, like the whole evolution of ads.
Yeah, it's changed, of course, so much, continues to evolve. And I always like to see, in some ways, how it relates to other platforms. We're seeing the emergence of social commerce, but even before the emergence of social commerce, things like TikTok shops and everything else. But if you just look at like digital advertising, probably the big one is Meta with Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And before that, tried and true, I guess the biggest has been Google over time, which is all keyword driven. And Amazon historically was a lot like Google's Google Ads, which is just basically, it's not really much of an ad on Amazon. All you're doing is getting your product ranked in the top 3. So the ad is really just the keyword and the bid amount that you're bidding on. And then the quote unquote ad is just, right, it's just your product. There's no creative, there's no anything else at its base
Right.
level. And so, we always basically had like basically a large team managing all of our PPC and products and managing it individually. And you can do that still. You can have like a lot of people we talk about and we help a lot of people is, hey, I've got a guy on my team that manages PPC, and that is fine. But nowadays it's so much harder. It's kind of like your automobile, right? So like back in the day, or your dad or whatever, like, oh, I'm fixing the car, right? Like, oh, I know how to do this and do that with a car. Well, cars evolved so much, like pretty long time ago, right? But where they're so computer based and everything else, if you're going in and trying to tinker with a Porsche and mess with it, right, you're going to have issues more time than not. And PPC, Amazon advertising is a little bit like that because it's become so sophisticated. Like, again, back in the day, the way Amazon advertising worked was just like the first 3 spots were Amazon ads. All right. Just again, right out of the playbook of Google, the first handful of the top searches for a keyword are the ads, and then everything else is organic. Well, on Amazon, those days are gone, right? Like if you're shopping on Amazon and you start going through, it's like, and of course, ourselves as sellers on Amazon, when I shop on Amazon, I always want to see the organic, right? I'm always trying to see like, all right, where is the organic? And it's almost hard because there's the paid ads, there's like some organic, and immediately it flips right back to more paid ads. And the type of
Right.
ads are much more dynamic right now, right? There's a lot more sponsored brand advertising. There's a lot more video involved. It's just a lot more dynamic in terms of the type of advertising you see. And on the back end, right, it's also changed a lot. It's become a lot more sophisticated. So the days of just understanding the basic fundamentals of like the type of matches like that you do in terms of keyword matches, like an exact match or a phrase match or a broad match or auto campaigns. Like, yeah, those are like the very, very basics, but that's not going to be enough for you to really compete, to have your brand really compete in the marketplace in this day and age.
Yeah, that's good advice. So let's say a brand is making, hovering at that $10,000 to $12,000 a month range. And it's like the basics, like you're just talking about, the sponsored products, maybe some brand video ads. What's next? Like what else would you be recommending that brand to do?
Yeah, so I do recommend that everyone understand like the basics of PPC. Every brand owner or seller, and I always like to say, as an if you're an owner, again, if this is your job as you're an employee of a big brand, then certainly you're going to focus in on the advertising. But if you're a brand owner, an entrepreneur building these businesses, uh, I always say you want to know enough to be dangerous in terms of every aspect of your business, right? And like same thing, if you're running a restaurant, right? Like you need to know how to if your cook calls out sick, you need to know enough to be dangerous how to cook the menu, right, so to speak. And so when it comes to your Amazon brand, you need to understand how to run your PPC, not because you should do it without any help, but it's really about what I found. If you're going to use an agency, use a software, or get some help, which I do recommend you get some help, is you want to know the right questions to ask and you want to know how to manage it and understand it enough, right? Because if you're just relying on a third party, what I found, and this I've relearned this lessons many times, is a third party is never going to be a magic bullet for your business because they're never going to care more about your business than you do. All right. But that being said, if you are kind of leaning forward and you know the right questions to ask, and you've tried PPC, and so kind of what your weak spots are, um, what you're trying to solve a little bit. Then when you're engaged with a software tool like obviously BidX here, the sponsor here on the podcast, is those type of tools are super powerful, and they're more and more a necessity in this day and age, because in this day and age of like AI and power and leverage, you need tools like that because they can do things so much faster than just you manually on the Amazon advertising platform. You're going to need some help.
Yeah, good advice. And knowing that there are partners like BidX, like for my brand, I have BidX help me, is the best part, because you can ask any question. So I can learn from BidX and take an interest in what is happening and come up with the PPC plan together, knowing that there is an expert there.
Yeah, and I think it's just this blend of like man. It's not man versus machine. It's like man and machine. So you want to
Yeah.
have them, both together, quote unquote, man. When I'm talking about just being, you want that human connection, whether, you have someone to review your account, or again, you can hire someone internally to do this, or you can leverage like an account manager, one of these platforms. But then, like the tool like BidX and some other tools, like it can just do some really cool, powerful things like bid adjustments and things like changing your bid based on your organic key rank of certain keywords. So if I have like, my main product in my cell phone case, so let's say I'm selling my iPhone 16, and I notice like I drop out of the top 10 organically, like, ooh, we need to like, let's juice that up a little bit. I want to increase the bids. That's like super cool. And my team can't do that. But with like the automated bid adjustments for that, that's like huge. Same thing with inventory levels, right? So like we all know that inventory plays a big deal. A lot of times we've been on this kind of the ups and downs, or the accordion ins and outs of like, hey, my sales are going crazy. Oh no, I'm out of sale. I'm out of stock. And then your rank drops, and then you go back in stock, and then you rebuild it, and you keep going through this cycle that's really inefficient. But these tools now, like, I know the BidX tool can do this. as well too. But you can leverage tools that, like, hey, if my inventory, I have a lot of inventory, then no problem. Like, let's optimize and run our campaigns. But if I'm getting low on inventory, like, let's pull back on our PPC spend because, like, hey, we're going to run out anyways. Um, let's not overspend. Let's at least get a little bit of a higher margin in the meantime, even if the sales are going to be lower because we're going to run out of stock. And then, we'll get back into stock. And in some ways, it will shorten the amount of time you're out of stock because you'll have it a little bit longer. And again, hopefully, try to time it so that you're not out of stock at all. But these are type of things that you want to leverage, tools for that just individually are really difficult to manage oneself.
Yeah, AI automation is how you get the competitive edge. And it's exactly what you're saying. And it's not easy to do that as a human. And that is where the AI automation comes in. You mentioned BidX has that built in. And that's a big one, like that you mentioned the inventory. And then when your keywords drop, yeah, I mean, you dropped to position 11, BidX is going to ramp it up until you're at a certain place. And there's a lot of other guardrails and parameters too, right? Like daily spending and all of
Sure,
that.
like
But let's go
your
into,
ACost goals. Yeah, what's your ACost goals?
yeah.
What's your ROAS goals? What's your, you kind of set your goals and targets. And as I said earlier, like, sometimes certain part of your year or a certain part of the life cycle of your product, your goals may be different, right? So when you're first launching a product, you know that, hey, we're probably going to be less efficient in terms of profitability. So we've got to, like, allow a higher ACost because we're trying to drive that organic rank, right? And once you start organically ranking and start generating sales organically, well, then, you can reevaluate and go, okay, yeah, maybe we'll scale, maybe we'll scale up, maybe we'll increase our total budget because now we have the profit margins that we want because we're getting organic versus beginning where you're pretty much just relying on the advertising early on. And then it gets into a whole nother level of, this is just PPC we're talking about, but there's, again, there's other ways to advertising, whether it's the brand at the brand level, whether you're advertising things like, DSP and you're targeting on other platforms off of just Amazon.com itself, but across the suite of products. And, and there's some other unique things that are coming quick in terms of Amazon and that competitors are certainly using that you want to make sure you're up to speed on.
Yeah, I love the demand side platform. It's so cool to be watching like Prime at home or TV, and I'm like, hey, here's the brands. I know that brand.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, yep, exactly. So, and even Whole Foods like platforms, like data on that and online, like anything that's a digital asset of Amazon, they know they basically can cross sell, like you said, Prime and other things that they own. They own Twitch as well too. So there's a lot of different things that people don't realize that you have the ability to sell your product besides just Amazon.com as well.
Right. It reminds me of like commercials. Like I worked, prior to my Amazon industry, I worked for big companies like Callaway Golf that were advertising in the Super Bowl. And that was it. It's like, oh, we're going to have this like 45-second ad and spend all this money to get onto TV. And we thought it was so cool. It's like, no, brands, this is available to all of us Amazon sellers at a certain point, right? Like when your brand is ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. So just fits the point of yeah, you want to understand where your brand is, what the plan is, what the options are, um, what makes sense when. And again, it's why, you know, it's worthwhile to, like we do, right? You and I do this for anything, is that just find the experts at this and then go learn it, make it your own, and leverage the best tools to help us figure this stuff out faster and implement so your profitability and your sales are competing well, and you're kind of beating your competition in this day and age because things change every year.
Yeah, they do change and evolve. And I think now it's so exciting to have a brand on Amazon because of all the advantages you have to take your brand to the next level with DSP, AMC, lots of AI features, automations, which we will dig into in our next episode. This is a two-part series, so stay tuned for next week and catch us on AI for session 2 of this episode. Jamie, thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Joey.